It was past midnight in Washington, and while most of the Capitol slept, the White House was wide awake. Inside, the lights burned with an intensity matching the mood. A critical domestic agenda bill hung in limbo, stalled in the House chamber after nearly 20 grueling hours of negotiation. The corridors of power felt tight with tension, like the air before a storm. Advisors paced. Phones rang with increasing urgency. And at the center of it all sat the president, eyes fixed on the flickering glow of cable news coverage, watching as commentators speculated whether his administration's signature policy move was unraveling in real time. This wasn't just any bill. It represented a fundamental reshaping of how the federal government functioned, impacting healthcare, taxes, and executive power in sweeping ways. And now, it teetered on the edge of collapse. Behind him lay the remnants of a day spent in ceaseless outreach. Back-to-back strategy meetings, personal calls to lawmakers, impromptu sit-downs in the residence, and carefully orchestrated appeals. But nothing seemed to shift the stubborn core of resistance within his own party. Then came the moment. A flash of frustration. Controlled yet deliberate. He turned to his social media account and typed with the blunt urgency of a man who no longer had time to persuade. "What are the Republicans waiting for? What are you trying to prove? The people are watching and they're not happy." The post struck like a bolt of lightning. It wasn't just a vent, it was a calculated detonation. A signal flared to millions. A dare to those in his own camp. And by morning, the effect was unmistakable. Lawmakers who had spent days resisting began to return calls. Meetings were rescheduled. Positions shifted. Something had broken. Or perhaps something had been unlocked. By early afternoon, the vote succeeded, passing with only 2 defections. A legislative milestone had been reached. Not with charm, not with compromise, but with pressure. Blunt, strategic, unyielding pressure. In that moment it became clear. Midnight wasn't a deadline. It was a weapon. The legislation that passed that day wasn't just a bundle of policies. It was a blueprint for an entire worldview. On paper, it introduced tax reforms, restructured elements of healthcare, and expanded executive discretion over certain federal programs. But in its structure, it revealed something deeper. A long-game strategy. One that reimagined the dynamics of American governance. The bill had been engineered from the ground up to serve multiple purposes. Some elements were immediately visible, popular even. Tax relief, economic incentives, job creation grants. These were the opening moves designed to build support. But the more controversial reforms, particularly those affecting entitlement programs and interagency oversight, were deliberately delayed, set to take effect only after the next election cycle. This wasn't a technical decision. It was a strategic calculation. By spacing the rollout, the administration maximized short-term political capital while delaying long-term backlash. It was legislation designed not just to win a vote, but to win time, to buy maneuvering room, to change the terrain before the next battle began. To supporters, it was a masterclass in governance through vision. To critics, it was legislative sleight of hand. But to the man behind it, it was something else entirely. A monument. Not a stone obelisk or marble statue, but a structure nonetheless, one that would last, influence and ripple. A design etched into the machinery of government, long after the political noise faded. In his mind, this wasn't about pleasing every interest group. It was about altering the trajectory of the nation. Quietly, permanently. The final 20 hours before the bill's passage didn't unfold like a typical legislative countdown. They played more like the climax of a psychological thriller, driven by one man's refusal to let go. The president didn't delegate the last push. He embodied it. Phone in hand, sleep ignored, food barely touched. He moved from call to call like a general walking the lines before battle. No script. No staff buffering the message. Just the unfiltered voice of the president, dialing lawmakers one by one, changing tone with each name, gauging fear, loyalty, ego. To one, *, you've always been a fighter. Don't cave now. Asterisk. To another. Asterisk. If you break ranks, I'll make sure everyone knows it. Asterisk. To yet another. Asterisk. Do this, and I'll remember. I always remember. Asterisk. It was persuasion, pressure, and performance, all wrapped into one. Not politics but power, exercised through sheer presence. Inside the West Wing, aides whispered about the storm behind closed doors. Some were inspired, others unnerved. But all were aware that something extraordinary was unfolding. It wasn't just about passing a bill. It was about pushing the boundaries of willpower. Could a single individual, through force of determination alone, bend an entire branch of government to move? The answer came hours later, in the form of green-lit votes and a final tally displayed on screens across the country. He could. And he had. The moment the bill passed, it didn't quietly fade into policy. It became a spectacle. The signing ceremony was choreographed like a blockbuster movie. The stage, the White House lawn. The backdrop, a cloudless sky. The sound, the rumble of B-2 bombers overhead, flying in tight formation, their thunder rolling across the Capitol. Supporters packed in behind velvet barriers, waving flags, snapping photos, chanting. Giant screens relayed the moment to watch parties across the nation. The signature came slowly, deliberately, captured from every angle. This was not a celebration. It was a signal. The jets weren't there for patriotism alone. They were symbols of force, precision, and reach. The president wasn't just signing legislation. He was branding an era, reminding everyone that leadership in his world was as much about commanding attention as commanding votes. Commentators called it unprecedented. Opponents cried propaganda. Supporters wept and cheered. But the real story wasn't about political sides. It was about storytelling. In the modern age, victory isn't just about passage. It's about packaging. And this moment had been wrapped with military-grade optics and cinematic scale. The message was unmistakable. Power doesn't whisper. Echoes. Asterisk asterisk. In the corridors of the West Wing, the memory of a past defeat loomed large. A failed legislative attempt years earlier, where a major healthcare repeal crumbled in public view. That scar never fully faded. But cars can become maps. This time everything was different. From day one, the team focused not only on policy but on control. No freelancing. No off-message quotes. No late-stage surprises. The messaging was unified, almost militarized. Governors were briefed in advance. Party leaders were armed with talking points. Friendly media outlets launched coordinated coverage within minutes of each announcement. In the background, the president reminded lawmakers of the lesson from the past. Asterisk, we won't let this fall apart. Not again. Asterisk. And he didn't. 'Cause he had learned. Every mistake from before became a stepping stone. Every weakness had been studied and neutralized. Every defection anticipated and countered. This wasn't reaction. It was preemption. It was political evolution in action. Even critics grudgingly admitted, this version of the president was more focused, more disciplined, more dangerous than before. The moment had passed, but the consequences were only beginning. While the signing made headlines, deeper questions rose quickly. Critics pointed to delayed program cuts, expanded executive authority, and a lack of bipartisan input. Polling showed a nation split, not just on the policy but on the methods. Some felt uplifted, others felt left out. But inside the White House, a long-term plan was already underway. A messaging tour was launched. A media campaign blitz began. Rallies were planned across swing states. Economic success stories were fed to press outlets. The president's message was clear. Asterisk, give it time. Watch what happens. Asterisk. He didn't seek mass approval. He sought impact, legacy, transformation. The cost had been enormous. Exhaustion, political capital, public backlash. But to him it was worth it. Because true power doesn't require everyone to agree. It only requires that everyone feels it. And as the weeks rolled on, one thing was certain. The system hadn't just moved. It had been moved. Asterisk asterisk.